Welcome to Live Life in the Spirit. We are your hosts. I'm Pastor Penny Schulz.
And I'm Kristen Scharrenberg.
After watching our last episode, did you feel the Spirit stirring up in you and igniting a fire that made you want to explore the spiritual gifts just a little more? Or did you realize that you can actually ask for more than one gift?
So last week we did look at all of the different gifts of the Spirit, or many of them. So today we're going to really dive in and focus a little bit more on healing and discernment. So stay tuned if you are interested in really stepping into the full potential of living in the Spirit.
Join us as adventurers through God's Word, the Holy Lands, and beyond, exploring the fascinating and the weird, the difficult and the obscure. Come and see how the stories are woven together and how they still apply to our lives today.
We promise to bring you joy, hope, inspiration, and intriguing out-of-the-box thinking, and ultimately salvation through Jesus Christ.
So after watching the episode last week, did you start pondering and thinking about what your motives might actually be for wanting these gifts? Is it just because they're really cool? Or were you thinking of specific people that you really wanted to help? Or maybe it was even that the Spirit was going, there is so much more potential than what you're using.
It's one of those things too that, we did talk about we obviously talked about some of the amazing blessings that come with these gifts and just the joy of being part of something that God certainly doesn't have to include us in, but allows us to be a part of. And we talked about some of the harder parts of it, some of the difficulties. What if the very person that you want to heal, God says you can't?
I know that one. When I first started on this journey, my father was struggling with a lot of different ailments, his liver being the last one, and he was actually on the liver transplant list. And so I thought, wow, of all the people that I wanted to heal him first.
Of course.
And God said, hands off. And I couldn't understand why. It didn't make any sense. And I realized through the time and the gift of discernment that it had nothing to do with physical healing. This was something between him and God that he had to work through something first before he could. But then God started sending me all these other people that he wanted me to heal. And, thankfully I did not have any resentment, but I could see where a person could come to that point of, yeah, but I only did this because I wanted to heal this person, and you're making me heal all these people, and they're having successes, but I still can't even touch this one.
Right. This person's getting sicker and sicker, or I'm seeing them struggle with this, and these people are experiencing this miraculous healing.
Or this person, the cancer was completely gone, and for this person, they're still alive, but the cancer's still there. There's different types and different levels of healing. And there again, it's being that one in the Spirit. We talked about the instrument, we are just the vessel that God allows us to participate in. It's him that does the healing.
And not everybody's healing looks the same. So it might be that, like we said, this person, is completely healed and everything is fantastic and they're moving forward and it's great. And this person, maybe you can't heal their cancer, but I know you've experienced being able to give someone so much more quality of life in the time that they had.
I had a gentleman, I was just thinking of that as you were talking. I had a gentleman who had been diagnosed with stage 4 bone cancer. And so I had just started this church, and I went to see him and was very cautious about approaching any of this, but I felt led that I needed to see him. Now, he had been housebound at that point. And we talked and built a little bit of a rapport, and then I just kind of laid it out there on the line and said, I kind of think that God's telling me that I might be able to do something for you. And he actually was not one that would have been willing to go along with any of this, but he did. And that's why we say it's work, because it was 2 hours of working on him physically at that point, just the physical. He couldn't hardly even move from one room to the other and had to have the walker, and it was really bad. And when I got done, that man got up, didn't even use a walker and walked all the way over to his chair and sat down. And he hadn't been able to come to church in months because he was in so much pain, and he started coming to church every week. And then he even went out and started working his garden. And his wife needed to have knee surgery, and she was putting it off. She wouldn't do it because of him. And he wanted to be able to do that. He needed to be the husband again of that household. And it was really neat how God worked, because then after that, it was just physically healing his body enough through all the chemo treatments that it kept him up there so we could work on the emotional. He had 2 years. 2 years. And they were good quality years.
His wife was able to have the surgery, and he was able to
And it wasn't all roses. I mean,
right.
There was complications here and there. But the point was, we didn't heal him of cancer. I would have loved to have said, oh, God had another healing of cancer. But he had a healing, but it was different.
And what he was able to do with those 2 years. There was healing in a lot of other ways.
Oh, there was, on so many levels.
It doesn't always look the way we think it will.
No, and there have been people that have come to me wanting me to heal them, but they didn't. And we got nowhere.
You have to want the healing, but then you have to accept it and live healed.
You had those people that had the self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, this isn't going to work because nothing's ever worked, and God hasn't listened to one of my prayers, and he's not about to listen now. Well, when you come in with that attitude, I can't do anything much about that.
No. And we talked about, it's sometimes easier to live in the hell than to step into change, and it can be scary, but it keeps people stuck.
Well, and you know about that.
I do. Oh, absolutely. One of the first experiences I had, just as you were healing people and getting to kind of be a part of that process and see it, someone who struggled with mental health for years and had been through so much and wanted this healing and came to you earnestly and asking for it. But then on the other side of it, it was like their identity was gone, and trying to figure out how to live healed was too hard and too scary and too much. And so they sort of went right back into as if
old patterns.
Happened. Yes. It kind of reminds me, on the mental health side of things, you hear of people in addiction who, like a dry drunk. So someone who isn't actually drinking anymore, but they're still living the same lifestyle that they did when they were drinking.
Because that's what they know. The other is just too scary. As much as we want to be free, and we read the stories and we hear the stories, and oh, that's great and wonderful, but in reality, for some,
it can...
Or they don't think they're worthy.
Right. And I think that probably is at the center of it more often than not.
They can't allow themselves, why would God heal me? Why would God allow this to happen to me? Because I do not deserve it. I am not worthy.
And the beautiful and sad thing is none of us are.
No.
None of us are. But he offers it to all of us anyways. If we ask, and if we seek, and if we knock.
It's just a matter then of accepting, receiving, and wanting to live this new lifestyle, this new life-changing.
Yeah. This freedom. It's freedom from what has held you captive and held you bound. There's a lot of unbinding that's been happening. But we talk about that and look at that as the side of the person who wanted the healing. But as we talk about it as someone, if you're seeking a gift like healing, recognizing that there will be people that it doesn't go the way you think it will. Or you did something and that they won't live in that or accept it. And that can be really difficult.
It can be difficult, especially again if you have a loved one or a friend who, and it may not even be a physical healing, it can be that emotional or that spiritual, that you're trying to pull them out of the depths of whatever it is that they're in, and they're not receptive to hearing any of it.
Right. But you see that in the medical side of things. You look at you have the placebo effect. So people who feel like they have gotten some kind of medication, even though what they got wasn't, or people who are healed, but don't believe that they are. And so even, the numbers are all gone. You don't have an infection anymore, but you're still, I still hurt in that area. Or, it happens both ways. Well, it's the same with this.
You know, the gift of the discernment, where that comes into play so much and so deep, is just like we talked about. If you want to heal someone, and God may just say no because the timing is off. They're not ready for it yet. There's things that have to transpire, or pieces of the puzzle that need to go in that we haven't seen yet. Mm-hmm. Or what I tell people is, we can't physically harm or hurt anyone. Now, that being said, there is enough energy that goes through that if somebody's just had chemo, you have to be careful. You can't just start working on them right away, or you can literally drive that chemo out of their body way too soon. Or if they've just had surgery, you know, maybe God didn't allow you to heal them for whatever they needed surgery for, but you can maybe help in the healing aspect. Process. But the discernment is to know that sometimes the timing there, you have to wait, because if you were to heal something too soon, it can cause scar tissue maybe, or, I mean, there are just other things that we don't know into play. And so that listening and being patient and being at peace with whatever the Spirit says. I think one of the hardest things for me was if someone is on, say, their deathbed, or they're in that stage. I was told this, and I had to actually experience it myself to, I guess, understand it. They said that you would see a double wedding band symbol, which is you and Christ, the bridegroom and the bride. And they said when you see the double wedding band symbol on their heart, they've all know he's coming for his bride. And I have seen that several times. Now, I'm not saying that every person who's gone, I've seen it. But there have been on those that I wanted to so desperately to work on and to help or whatever, and I saw that right away.
And it was probably God's way of letting you know why.
Exactly. But you talk about a humility, a humbling vision, to know that Christ, the bridegroom, has already marked them, and he is coming for his bride. And well, it is, you talk about emotions being torn, because you know here on earth that means they're not going to be here anymore. But at the same time, you know that where they're going is going to be so much better. Yeah, they're just, I've recently had that happen again on one particular person, which I saw that right away at the beginning. And it's hard as the healer to, like I said, you have this whole gambit of emotions, and it's,
this particular person, there was emotion on lots of levels, you know, because if it's somebody that you know, or somebody that you care about, someone that you've mentored,
then where the discernment comes in is it's very easy to say, oh, come on, God, please, can't you just let me help? Well, if I just work really hard, or if I just do this, or if I just do that. Yeah, let me just tell you, it's not going to work. I mean, you can do it, but it isn't going to go anywhere.
Right. And so then that time and energy is spent where it's not going to be effective.
Exactly.
And it could have potentially gone somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. That's where I think it talks about all the gifts, but one that's not mentioned is patience. And I know that's not on there. However, I think patience is a borderline gift, because on our own, I don't know that you've heard of people who they say, oh, they have all the patience. No, it's, I think, in my opinion, they have learned how to tap in to the patience that Christ gives, the peace. Because on our own,
we're not patient.
We are not patient, and we don't just normally have peace. You can't have peace in the turmoil or the chaos, or when you're brokenhearted, or when you're wanting to help somebody. That's why I love Philippians 4:6, you know, when he says, be anxious for nothing, but in all things with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving. Make your petitions or your requests known to God. And the peace that passes all understanding will keep both your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. I live by that verse so much, because it's so easy to be anxious. Anxious for a lot of things. Oh, but what's the best part? I mean, you know, we're supposed to ask, but we ask with thanksgiving, knowing that he will answer in his way. But then we ask for the peace that passes all understanding when it's not the way we want it to be, or to look, or whatever, that we're going to be okay with it.
So after thinking about and hearing more about the pros and cons, we'll call it, if it's something that you're still really interested in and it's in your heart to do this, Matthew 7:7 says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be opened.
I love that verse. It's also kind of in Revelation. It's Jesus keeps talking about the knocking. Now, of course, in these verses, he's talking about salvation. But it can be used, I think, for many other things. You're not just flippantly asking, I want this. It says first you have to what? You ask, but then you have to be earnest. You have to seek it out. You just can't go, okay, I want this.
That'd be great.
If you're really serious about it, what are you going to do? You're going to start perusing the... I'm thinking like, let's say you wanted a specific car, or my husband's looking at mowers right now. He didn't just say, God, I want a mower and I want this exact same thing, and then poof, it shows up. No, what's he going to do? He's going to start seeking it out. He's going to start looking. He's going to start knocking on doors of those who have them for sale, whatever, and then he's going to find one, hopefully. God's taking this to a whole different level. He's saying on a spiritual level. It's the same thing, though. You don't just ask and then be a passive bystander.
No, it requires action and work.
And a desire. Because the more you keep seeking and the more you keep knocking, one of two things are going to happen. Either you're going to find and get exactly what you wanted, or you're going to discover that maybe you did not want that after all.
No.
We forget that side.
Yeah. And because if you're truly asking and seeking, you will be given the answer that you're meant to have.
You know, you may think that one of those gifts sounds really, really cool, but the more you really explore it, you may feel the Spirit going, you know, that's not really the one I want you to have, or at least not right now. Why don't we look at this one? This is the one that God has ready for you. You know, in James 4:1-3, this would be the brother of Jesus, even says, you do not have because you have not asked. We're not talking about our wish list that we, as kids, had for Santa, or maybe still adults have that, or for Amazon. This is my wish list. Yeah, no, that's not it at all. He's saying, what is it on a spiritual level? You just don't have it because you haven't asked. When you earnestly seek it out, God wants to give those good gifts.
Absolutely.
And in abundance when our heart is right and it is in tune with Him.
And so even as you're praying about it and you're asking and seeking that He will change your heart or help you to find that desire of your heart. Because He wants to give you the desires of your heart, and He wants to make sure that those are in line with His plan.
So I think this one was going to be a little shorter on the meat and potatoes part. We're going to get into a little more with the what do you do with that. If you are now still searching and seeking, we encourage you to stick around, and we're going to get more into what might be in store for you.
Well, I think now then would be a good time for Joy Break. So I have just a couple of little jokes here for us today. Our 4th grader celebrated his birthday on crutches, so he couldn't carry the cupcakes into school without help. I asked our 6th grader, Noah, to help his brother carry them in. I could, he said, but I'd prefer not to. It's classic big brother right there. Spotting a teaching moment, my husband asked Noah, what would Jesus do? Noah answered, Jesus would heal him so he could carry them himself.
It kind of reminds me, how many here had that like flannel board in Sunday school with the little paper people that you put up on the flannel board? Yeah. Well, we only had just a few people. And so, when we're talking about the lame man, we just ripped him in two. And then after we talked about Jesus healing, we just taped him back together again.
That's a good visual lesson right there.
Healed! Scotch tape.
That's awesome. Okay, so then the other one here. A trooper pulled over a priest and immediately smelled alcohol on his breath.
Okay.
This is funny because Penny got pulled over last night.
Okay.
Sorry.
For not drinking. Or speeding.
No, because, in transit, stickers are hard to see at night, apparently.
Yes.
Perfectly legal car, going the speed limit, nothing else.
Actually going 10 mile an hour under the speed limit, hence I guess why he thought I was drinking, because I was going too slow. I just didn't want to get my new car dirty.
So anyhow, this particular trooper pulls over a priest and immediately smells alcohol on his breath. The next thing he notices is an empty wine bottle lying on the passenger seat. "Have you been drinking?" the officer asks. "Just water," says the priest. "Then why do I smell wine?" The priest looks at the bottle and shouts, "Good Lord, he's done it again."
Actually, they had that on Facebook. I think it was a Walmart post. It had water, and on the little thing it said wine. It's a good year, day one.
Day one.
There was one of my favorite ones was Mark Linkletter, The Kids Say the Darndest Thing. And he was asking kids different Bible stories. That was back when kids knew Bible stories.
Yes.
I digress. Anyway, there was this one little girl that he was talking about the story of the wedding at Cana and when Jesus turned the water to wine. And yes, they knew that. And he said, "Can you tell me then what that story means?" And she goes, "When you're out of wine, get on your knees and pray."
That's good. That's good. You can put it wherever you want it.
That is
I didn't even think that before I came.
Sure you didn't.
No, that time I really didn't.
Well, now we come to
What do you do with that?
Well, this is the part of the show where we are actually going to get down to the nitty-gritty. And for those of you who have stuck around this long, it's probably because you have felt that tug and that nudge, and you are getting serious about, okay, I think God is saying, explore this gift. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? I can speak from personal experience on this one with the discernment. I had been into the healing ministry for quite a while, but I had been serving a couple churches, and we were feeling the leading and being called to kind of move back home for multiple reasons. And I thought, I'd been a pastor for long enough. I was just going to take a break. I just wanted to be mom for a while. Well, when we started to move back, we couldn't find a house. And then when people found out that we were moving back, I had 8 churches at one point wanting me. You talked about the good and good when you do. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling God, I said, I'm going to make the wrong decision. Mm-hmm. So I said, this is what I want you to do. Just remove all the other choices and only leave me with the place that you want me to go. And one by one, they all started being taken off the table, and I was left with one church, and the only church that had a parsonage, which I had joked before when we couldn't get a house. I said, well, maybe God's got a parsonage in mind. Little did I know, that's exactly what it was.
That's right.
So, you can be in that quandary of both were, it was serving God, but where did he want me to serve him?
Right.
And obviously, he wasn't going to give me a break. That
was not in his plan. See, you wanted to make God laugh, so you made a plan.
That's right. I had to have a plan, so that way I can go to B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm usually at H or I, but I had to start somewhere.
Somewhere. I get that.
You've been on this journey for a lot shorter time, but that was a big jump and a decision with someone you really didn't even know to be willing to go to Israel.
It was.
With them and room with them for 14 days, 16 days, 18 days. I don't know. It was a long time.
Yeah, it was. That was God.
How many nights did you pray about that one?
It was interesting that because of what happened, because of some of the things that happened leading up to that, for me it was Yeah, well, what I said was, God, if it's meant to be, it's going to have to fall into place, because I didn't know. And then more things happened that I thought, there's no way this is going to happen. And yet it all just went,
Just fell right into place.
Yeah. So I did. I mean, and I think that's one thing I have learned from you as far as my prayer life. I'll add that here. That idea of, okay, God, I'm not going to make the right decision. So if you could just take all the wrong ones away, that'd be great. And sure enough, he does. He really does.
Or when you find yourself getting very restless with something and you're looking for more and you're wanting more, it could be the timing. Mm-hmm. And then again, maybe he's just giving you a chance to discover and to work on that discernment and peace and patience and all those wonderful things. Mm-hmm. To wait.
Yeah. Well, and it was one of those things that even, I talked a little bit last time about this gift and having experienced it personally. And then I was like, I want to be able to offer that to other people. That didn't necessarily mean that that's what was going to happen. And I did. I prayed about it a lot and started reading scripture and started just really diving into like, okay, God, this is what I feel like is something that I want. And that was my prayer every day for quite some time. If this is not what you want for me, take away the desire. And if it is, let's make it happen, And I did, because I felt like I had lived outside of God's will. I had kind of gone on my own path. And for me, at this point in my life, figuring out God's will and following it is like top priority over anything else. And so if it's not meant to be, take away the desire and give me something else. If it is, just, guide me. And so he has, and he's been very faithful in that. And I've experienced some amazing things and gotten to be a part of some amazing healing. I've not been able to heal some people, even just with some, what would seem like more simple things that I would have liked to have. My dad's on that list. He's got to have surgery tomorrow, and it was bugging me. And I just had to let that go, because if I'm going to trust in him in the big stuff, I have to trust in him in everything. But it was bugging me, and I did. I had to go to God and say, I'm sorry, this is bothering me. I really wanted to be able to help, and I still don't understand why, but I trust in the process, and I trust in you. Tomorrow I'll sit in the hospital like a daughter and be there and pray for him and all of that stuff, but it didn't look like I would have liked to it.
Well, and I said that for my dad, I couldn't do anything. And we're talking 11, 12 years go by. His condition was not getting better. It was getting much worse. And God had woke me up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And there was like 4 people that he put on my brain that I needed to work on. And so I did. And that was the obedience part, not knowing that at the time. I mean, that's not that I wouldn't have, but that's the reward. Mm-hmm. I guess one of the rewards was when I got all done, God was like, okay, now you can work on your dad. And the first thing out of my mouth that said, oh, thank you, Jesus, was what changed. Because I knew that it was something spiritual between him and God, and that was the timing of everything. And I wanted to know what had changed. So that I hadn't found out, but I did. And it wasn't this big, huge thing that you would think. It didn't take very long and whatever, but this was the cool part. What I did not know. And I did not tell my folks because I didn't want to give them false hope, And I did text my mom a couple days later and said, hey, I just want to let you know that this is for what it's worth. This is what I did. And hopefully Dad's going to start feeling better. Did not know that he had his liver doctor appointment the day after I had texted her. And when they went to the appointment and they did the blood work and everything, she came back and she goes, your liver is perfect. There wasn't anything wrong with it anymore. He was off the transplant list, off everything else. And I couldn't figure out, well, okay, why now? Why at this point in this stage? Well, then the answers kind of came a little bit. He started having a lot of heart issues, and if he'd had the other compounding it, it would have been too much, I think. But it was just, and I'm sure there was a spiritual aspect there that I don't know and I had not been privy to, and that's okay. I don't need to know. But God does answer. There again, sometimes just timing. And there's other people at work. I mean, it wasn't because I wanted to heal him. It was because my father had to finally do whatever he needed to do. Maybe do get right with God. That's why we said that line bugs me because, people say, well, you're just not right with God. Well, sometimes that can be it.
Right.
But that's not always it.
That's not always the only reason.
No. Or you just don't have enough faith. Well, maybe you have that self-fulfilling prophecy that nothing's going to work. But then again, maybe you do have more than enough faith. Maybe you've been knocking and you've been asking and you've been seeking and you've been praying and praying and praying. And you haven't gotten anywhere.
And like we said, there's so many reasons that can happen that have nothing to do with faith or worthiness or any of that. And so just
you are loved with an everlasting love, and sometimes it's in that brokenness, in that chaos.
We had a friend that we met on the trip to Israel that was talking about, he was told by a friend who cared about him that
when he was going through a really rough time.
He was going through a really rough time, that you could almost smell the desperation on him. And it probably wasn't said in a complimentary way necessarily, but he was able to take that at a different point and say, when we are at that point, that's when we seek God most. And we are probably closest to God in our darkest hours. And so maybe that's actually when we're at our best.
When God smells that desperation, that fragrance is actually, he knows what brings us closer to him.
Absolutely. Maybe it smells good to God.
I don't know. Probably not like Old Spice, I have a feeling.
Probably not.
We're going to get in next week into deliverance ministry more. And we said that's kind of an umbrella term for everything. Everybody does it differently. That's why we wore this shirt today.
Yes.
Get used to different, because what God does in and through us is totally different than most people. And a lot of the stuff does not look the same as what maybe you've heard or you've experienced or the classes you've taken or that kind of stuff. But if you are still with us and you are still interested and you feel so called and so led to do this, please reach out to us and let us know. We'd be more than happy to talk to you and to see what exciting things that God has in store for you on this journey of living life in the Spirit. Until next time, Shalom.